All we've got to do now is to start pumping.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fully Inflated Football Podcast. I am your host, Marcus Whitman. Can you believe we are a week from the draft? This thing came up so quickly, and if you can't tell by my expression, I'm just a little bit excited, as I'm sure you guys are. Cannot wait. This is going to be our last pre-draft podcast. Lots of craziness next week. Going to be cranking out videos, gearing up for the draft stream as well. Lots of preparation to go into the draft stuff. So can't imagine I'm going to have a podcast next week, but we are going to make the most of it and have a good one this week. Last week we talked about the offensive side of the ball, really tying a ribbon up on that whole side of the ball. And this week we're going to be going through the defensive stuff. We're going to do my top 10 interior defensive linemen for the class. Also going to do my guys and my not my guys for the defensive side of the ball, just like we did for offense last week. I'm going to be doing corner and safety individually for top 10 videos over the next 3 or 4 days, so you can look forward to that. So it's a great show ahead. I'm really excited. I do have some stuff to talk about before we get into all of the things football. So if you can't tell, if you're listening to the audio version or something, I am repping the new TFG merch. And I threw this thing on. It came in a couple days ago. I'm not even kidding. It is already my favorite sweatshirt. It's super soft inside. It's got kind of that fuzzy, just comfortable material. It fits me perfectly. It's got a nice big pocket. I love the white strings on it. So I'm just super excited about this sweatshirt. I got a t-shirt too. I'm really impressed with what came back with the merch. So I wanted to remind you guys that you can rep the brand. And honestly, the sweatshirt, I think it's $40. I would pay 60 or 70 for this thing because I love the material. I think it's super soft. So the link for the merch is in the description below. It's also my pinned tweet right now at TFG Football on Twitter. So you can check out the store, get some TFG merch. I also wanted to remind you guys the aforementioned draft stream. Take out your phones and set a reminder for April 29th and the ensuing weekend. I'm going to be streaming here on YouTube, and I know there's a lot of options out there to consume the draft, so I greatly appreciate you considering to spend that time with me. I've put in so much preparation for the draft. It's just going to be 3 days of you and me enjoying the draft, giving my live reactions and analysis to every pick. And, I'm going to talk about this in a second, but I have finished my draft board. 503 players completed. So my goal is to know every single player that gets picked, and I can give you my analysis on him. So I'm super excited for that. And then lastly, I wanted to remind you that this show is brought to you by my Patreon. It's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. All of this draft stuff would not be possible. Doing YouTube is a full-time job, would not be possible without all of your support on Patreon. But it's not just how you can support the show. You will get exclusive content as well. I mentioned over 500 players evaluated this year. I am so proud of my draft board this year, and you can get access to that on Patreon. You can click through, you can sort by individual traits, you can learn about the different scheme archetypes and different things like that. The way I view the game like that is just a draft tool galore. I'm super proud of it this year, so you can get access to that. You'll get film breakdowns. We just did one on Javon Holland out of Oregon, the safety. I was impressed by what we saw from him. Lots of other film breakdowns there as well. And now that my draft board is done, I can finally get into those 7-round mock drafts I keep talking about. I'm actually going to be doing it by division because we'll be able to cover every team, but also kind of make it so I don't have to make 32 different videos, mix things up a little bit as far as not picking the same players over and over again. So 7-round mock drafts starting up on Patreon. That is my next thing on my lengthy to-do list. But yeah, it's patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. You can support the show and get exclusive content. You can even submit questions to the show through there as well. We're going to get into the mailbag again at the end of this podcast. So that is enough plugging, but I wanted to get that stuff out of the way so we can now focus on the defensive side of the ball for the 2021 draft. Let's get into the top 10 interior defensive linemen now for the 2021 NFL draft. And yeah, let's just go. It's not the most exciting class. It's a lot of guys that I think will be in the league for a while, but maybe early down run defenders or projects as pass rushers as well. But anyway, let's start with number 10. I should probably have the list pulled up if we're going to do this. All right. Tommy Togiai is my number 10 interior defensive lineman. And a lot of people really like this guy. I've seen him as high as like number 5. So he's an interesting player. He's 6'2", 296 pounds. And, he's a good athlete, I would say. Not a great athlete, but he's got one of those unique builds. It feels like every draft there's one or two of these guys that have this weird build. It goes back to Tim Settle, who I liked years ago out of Virginia Tech, where they have a kind of skinny lower half and just this upper body built like a fridge that is just super strong. And that's Tommy Togiai. So it comes with some pros and cons there. On the downside, doesn't have as great like anchor and play strength. He can get moved off the ball pretty easily in the run game, especially when he's playing that nose tackle spot. So that's a downside to him. He's not really going to be like a block space eater, if you will. But those quick feet do come. I gave it away. The slim feet, the slim ankles and the calves, it comes with quickness that you don't normally see from such strong players. So you get some pros and cons there. What that allows for him is a nice get off the ball, and then that strong upper body where he carries most of his weight allows a lot of pop when he throws those hands. So he is actually really good at shedding blocks. He's an excellent run defender. And then beyond that, he can generate some power there. Now, he wasn't quite as good of a pass rusher as I think he can be. And part of that is he doesn't get a lot of power from his lower body. It's all up here. So I would like to see maybe just a little bit of weight distribution there. Maybe skip a few less leg days, if you will. But I like him. He's a unique player. Now, he's not as big as Tim Settle. Tim Settle's like 6'5", 320 pounds. So it's not a perfect comparison. But just the way that they play and how good of a football player they'll be, I think it's comparable. Now, I really like Tim Settle. So I'm not going to say I like Tommy Togiai as much, but in that same kind of ballpark stylistically as maybe like Tim Settle is a third defensive tackle that can just kind of do a little bit of everything. But with that lack of size, I probably wouldn't want him playing a ton of nose tackle. Then I have number 9, Marlon Tuipulotu. And you really got to get these two USC defensive tackles straight because they both have, I apologize if this is inaccurate, but I believe Tuipulotu, and then my next one, spoiler, is going to be Jay Tufele, who I'm very close on, but they both kind of have that Samoan, I believe, background. I think those names are both of Samoan heritage. I could be wrong there, but it's tough to keep these guys straight. They're both redshirt juniors that opted out of the 2020 season. But let's get back to Marlon Tuipulotu, because these guys are very different players, even though they're almost identical sizes. So Tuipulotu, to me, he is the higher floor, lower ceiling of these two guys. I love his run defense, and he actually has one of the highest impact grades of any player on this list. I think you can plug him in right away as a first, second down run defender, but he doesn't quite have that quick twitch. He doesn't necessarily have the get off the ball. Now, he has play strength, and he did come in a little bit heavier than he was listed at USC a year ago, but I feel very good about him as a role player. And, maybe best case scenario, you're getting a, let's say, is it Dalvin Tomlinson, the D-tackle that just signed with Minnesota? I would say that's maybe best case scenario for Marlon Tuipulotu, but I'm not expecting much of a pass rusher here and a guy that's going to be super exciting on third down getting after the quarterback. Then we have Jay Tufele, who, like I said, out of USC, redshirt junior, also opted out of the 2020 season. And Jay Tufele is much more quick off the ball. He's got a better get off, which is going to translate better as a pass rusher. And he's a lot lighter as well, 6'2", 305. Now, he doesn't quite have the ability to throw his blocker aside and, do the stack and shed run defense ability, the gap discipline type of stuff. But his athleticism definitely pops a lot more. He was a much more productive pass rusher at USC. So he's in a different mold. He's in a type that he might not want, you might not want him to play a ton in the first year. He can get in there and rotate, maybe your fourth guy. But he's a guy that maybe does need to get up to speed, especially after not playing last year, get up to speed a little bit more, but is someone that I think we're going to hear a lot of Sheldon Richardson comparisons on this list because he kind of is that guy that's not a great run defender, but on the field on third down, he's a good piece on the interior, not someone that ruins your game plan or ruins your week or anything like that, but definitely someone that needs to be accounted for as a pass rusher. And if you throw scrubs out there to block the guy, he's either going to beat you with power, can be quick around you, just a versatile, potential, higher upside pass rusher. So Jay Tufele, an interesting player out of USC. And I have a third to a fourth round grade, by the way, on everyone that we've talked about to this point. Next up, also a third to a fourth round grade, and it's someone that later on in this podcast is going to be a not my guy, only because I don't get too excited about him. Very, very similar player to Marlon Tuipulotu, who we talked about earlier, and that's Davion Nixon out of Iowa. So he's a disciplined player, as are most Iowa defensive and offensive linemen. He's very strong. He's clearly very committed in the weight room. And that's basically what I see from him. I don't see a lot of explosiveness. I can't imagine spending a top, 2 rounds pick on Davion Nixon because I just don't really ever envision him becoming an impact player. I think very similar, again, to Marlon Tuipulotu, a guy that you can trust to defend the run almost immediately, and that's about it. Like, he's kind of is what he is in a lot of ways. If he's on the field for third down, rushing the passer, I just don't think you're going to get a whole lot from him. The get-off is fine. The quickness is so-so. He doesn't generate as much power as he could. Now, there is some upside in there that could be brought out. I shouldn't say that he is what he is. Like, there is some growth potential. He's 6'3", 315 pounds with 35-inch arms. So those are wicked long arms. But I just didn't see him utilize that to his best advantage. As a run defender, absolutely. He'll get his hands inside and just has those long, strong arms that can rip guys aside. But I didn't see the combination of get-off, length, and power with a bull rush potential that he could have. It just didn't click for me on tape. So I'm not overly excited about Davion Nixon. He's fine. Third, fourth round, he's right in there with these guys. But I'm talking kind of negatively here because for a second round pick where he's kind of projected, I just don't think you're really going to get that return value. I'd rather go to the free agent market and sign, a Geno Atkins or like a Zach Kerr that the 49ers did. The Panthers just picked up, Austin Johnson out of Penn State. That kind of deal. I'd rather go the cheap veteran route than spending a second-round pick on Davion Nixon. Not that I don't think he can be a starter or anything, but I just don't think he's a very high upside player. Then we got my number 6 interior defensive lineman. Now we get to talk about a big, meaty nose tackle, Tyler Shelvin out of LSU. So in 2019, I worked a lot of games for PFF watching LSU's defense, and Tyler Shelvin immediately, obviously just the size became noticeable, but he was the dude in the interior there. They really trusted on him in those short yardage situations to be that not just space-eating nose tackle, but a guy that can get some push, get off blocks, make a tackle. There's a lot of nose tackles available, but I think Tyler Shelvin has legitimate upside to be like one of the great ones. Something like a Snacks Harrison, for example. He's 6'2", 350 pounds. He does get off the ball well. He does two-gap extremely well. He does not get moved in the run game. Not going to be for everybody. Not everyone, values a true nose tackle. He's not much of a pass rusher. He can get a little bit of power if it's first or second down and they do go play action or they do a drop back pass. He can get some push, but it's very minimal, just like Snacks Harrison in a lot of ways. So I just like him as a player. I feel extremely good about his valuation. Obviously, a nose tackle. You're not drafting him too high. You're not expecting too much from him. But compared to nose tackles that typically come out that I usually give fourth-round grades, I like Shelvin a little more. I like him as a second or a third-round pick, late second, not like top 50 or anything. But if you need a nose tackle, I think Tyler Shelvin's going to give you a really cheap one for 4 years because of that rookie contract and can start day one. He's been a consistent force for LSU, and I just feel extremely safe about his evaluation. Then we have number 5, getting into some of the higher upside conversations now. Milton Williams out of Louisiana Tech. Really interesting, fun player. And you could get really in-depth and say he's a complex evaluation, or you could just kind of take the route I'm going to take and just say very simplistic evaluation. Freak athlete, one of the just pound-for-pound freakiest players in this class. Let's read off his scores here. I got to slide this spreadsheet over. But let's read off Milton Williams' testing numbers here. So we've got a 4.67 40-yard dash. That is like elite for a defensive tackle. 1.65 10-yard split, which if we sort this using the draft board here that you can get on Patreon, that is first in the class. His 3-cone at 6.96 is also first in the class. To have a sub-7 3-cone for an interior defensive lineman is stupid. That is Aaron Donald type of lateral quickness stuff right there. Most corners don't run a 6.96 3-cone. The next guy down, by the way, was Darius Stills and Mustafa Johnson and Tommy Togiai. So some of these smaller defensive tackles, but they were at 7.8. So much better 3-cone there than anybody else for Milton Williams. A 4.33 short shuttle, which surprise there. No surprise there, rather. First in the class. Broad jump 121, which is going to put him, what do you know, first in the class. Vertical jump 38.5, first in the class. And you'd say, okay, so he's small, he's 6'3", 284, he's kind of this hybrid edge guy. Well, he's probably not all that strong, right? Well, let's go ahead and sort this. Nope, 34 bench reps, which puts him in the top 7. Ties him for 7th in this class. So the dude is just, it's not even fair, the type of athlete that we're looking at. And then you might say, all right, well, that all sounds great, but he must not have much of a, pass rush plan, or he must not defend the run well. No, he kicked ass at Louisiana Tech. He absolutely dominated. He used those tools to his advantage. Yeah, maybe like the sack production wasn't up there, but he got pressures, moving all over the place, going anywhere from 3 tech to a wide 9, 7, 7 technique, I should say, playing edge, interior defensive line. He is the true sort of hybrid interior defensive end mix, if you will. And I think there were some questions. Is he an edge? Is he an interior piece? He, to me, is a 3 technique, a 4 technique. Do some of what Aaron Donald does, where they will actually line him up on the edge and utilize that athleticism on different stunts and stuff. Now, there is a lack of power aspect to his game. He does have shorter arms. He does lean a little bit too much on that quickness. And you do worry about his true run defensibility moving to the next level. So he's not like a can't-miss prospect, but I have a 2nd to a 3rd round grade on him. I think if you put him in a situation where you can coach him up and, let him groom a little bit and, not have expectations that he's going to start day one and dominate, I really think Milton Williams could be just insane. The profile coming out here is rare, and he is declaring early as a redshirt junior. He's ready to go. He's like, I don't need to show anything else. So Milton Williams out of Louisiana Tech, one of the more interesting players in this class. Definitely getting some buzz depending on who you talk to, but in a lot of ways not getting enough buzz as well. And if he goes in the top 50 of this draft, do not be surprised, because this is the type of athletic profile, and he was good on tape, that if a team that sees him as a great scheme fit really likes him, they're going to go after this guy, because he's one of those players that if they missed out on him, they would really be beating themselves up. So I don't know if he would go as high as like Tampa Bay at 32, but I think that might be his ceiling or whatever as far as the draft goes. I just mocked him in the 2nd round at Tampa Bay, but something like that where he can really come along in a team that doesn't need that day one impact necessarily. Maybe even like New Orleans at 28, he could go as high as that. I wouldn't be all that surprised. Now, I wouldn't endorse that. He is a little bit more of a project than that to take him in the 1st round, but yeah, you get the point. Milton Williams is a highly intriguing physical profile. Then we get Aleem McNeil out of NC State, and him and Milton Williams are very tight to me, both 2nd to 3rd round picks, but McNeil is going to be a lot more of that day one impact and more of a traditional defensive tackle type. So obviously it's just going to come down to what you need and what you're looking for, stylistic preference. But Aleem McNeil climbs up here because I believe he has a much higher upside as a pass rusher than some of the guys we mentioned earlier, like Davion Nixon, obviously Tyler Shelvin, Tui Pelotu, Tommy Togiai. But Aleem McNeil he was a high school running back and linebacker, and then he gets to NC State, and they're like, hey, can you play nose tackle at 340 pounds, please? He's like, all right, sure, coach, I'll do whatever you want. And he was just one of the best run defenders, if not the best run defender in the NFL, could not be moved, quick off the ball, actually had somewhat success as a pass rusher. So a player that he really reminds me of, and I think I have this as my comp in the draft board, but I want to double check, is, yes, Folorunso Fadukasi. And some of you might not know that name. If you've been around the channel, you know I'm a big Folorunso, I might not be saying his name right, but I am a big Fadukasi fan for the New York Jets. Very underrated run defender who does have actually some bit of success getting after the quarterback. Freaky, 6'2", I don't know if I'm getting these measurables right, but in the 315 full-size defensive tackle range, enough meat on the bones to not get moved off your spot and be a top run defender, but not too oversized where you can't really move and get after the quarterback. And Aleem McNeil, athletically speaking, I think has a similar profile as far as just that athletic background with the quick feet and just the natural core strength that you look for. But he's losing weight from 340 down to 320 to be much more in that ballpark. So we don't really have tape of him at this weight, but it's definitely intriguing because I know he's strong. I know he has the willingness and technique to defend the run, and even at 6'2", 320 pounds, you can still stick him at nose tackle if you want, but I think now being much more versatile at 320 pounds, I think we're going to see even more of those athletic traits start to come through. His testing numbers were great. Everything just kind of checks out for Aleem McNeil. He's a true junior declaring early. So just a hard worker, great work ethic. I mean, just the fact this guy's been able to shift his body weight like this, it speaks volumes to his discipline, both with his diet and in the weight room. And his game is really good. So I like this guy as a guy that can develop and actually have a pretty high upside. And I'm almost talking myself into liking him more than I should, just getting excited talking about him. But yeah, Aleem McNeil is IDL 4 on this list. And then let's talk about one of my guys, who some of these other guys will be on my guys list, by the way, but Osa Odigizua out of UCLA. And he's very polarizing. He could be one of these boom or bust prospects because teams have been looking for the next Aaron Donald. Every year we see these guys, 6'2", 280 pounds. Solomon Thomas, there's no way he goes fourth overall to the Interdivision 49ers or third overall. Maybe he would have, but to somebody else. But without Aaron Donald, Solomon Thomas doesn't go third or fourth overall. And Osa Odigizua, I think, is going to be somewhere in between Solomon Thomas, who he hasn't had the play strength and he hasn't developed as a pass rusher like Aaron Donald, who's the most polished pass rusher in the class, on top of being a physical freak, just from a finesse standpoint and technique. Solomon Thomas never developed that stuff, but I think Osa Odigizua will be somewhere in the middle of the Thomas-Donald spectrum, which is a really good football player. My pro comp for him is actually Shelby Harris, who's an underrated player for the Denver Broncos, who's an incredible run defender, which really stood out about Osa Odigizua as opposed to many of the undersized interior defensive linemen that have not been the next Aaron Donald. Is Osa Odigizua has a loaded base. He flies off the ball, and he is just automatic as far as using those long 34-inch arms to get them inside, strong arms too, control his guy, kind of take a look where the ball carrier is, and then his combination of arm strength and quickness, he's so natural, at least as that sort of defensive end, 3-4 defensive end. As a nose tackle, it's not going to work out. He's too small. But at least kind of on the more perimeter of the defense, he's so natural, just kind of peeking, throwing his guy to the side, and then he's fast enough to pursue and keep up with these running backs in the backfield. So I love his floor as a run defender, actually, in the right system, which that's where the Shelby Harris comp comes in, who's also kind of undersized and really quick and strong like that. But Shelby Harris also offers a decent upside as a pass rusher. He's a good number 2 interior piece. He's also incredible with long arms. You see him deflecting a ton of balls as well. But Shelby Harris can generate some power. He'll get inside, and he's got quick feet to generate some rush. So if you're getting Shelby Harris in the late second, early third round, that is phenomenal value. And I think that is the type of player Osa Odigizua is going to be. Now, he's not going to be for everybody, but he, to me, is really polished. That's why he comes in above Milton Williams, because I think Milton Williams is a long way to go to be as good as Osa Odigizua is at that age, at that position, rather. Odigizua is a year older. But yeah, really fun player. Needs to probably go to a 3-4 defense, or at least a team that has a bigger interior piece for a 4-3 team, so he can stick to being that true 3 technique. But yeah, interesting scheme fit. Nice player, Osa Odigizua. Then we have Levi Onwuzurike, and he is strangely familiar. Do you guys remember that cluster of day 2 defensive tackles last year? Justin Matabuike. I really struggled with the guys' names last year, keeping everybody straight because they were all very similar. And Levi Onwuzurike is right in that group of 6'3", 295-pound, 3 techniques with a really nice first step and just sort of the athletic tools you look for to be a potential number 1 defensive tackle in a guy that can, yes, defend the run, but probably never going to be an elite run defender. But his quickness, his length, and his just power in general, he's got kind of it all. Now, he was a 2020 opt-out. We unfortunately did not get to see his growth, but everyone raves about his work ethic. I think he's got kind of that coach's son mentality. I could be wrong about the coach's son thing, but everyone just speaks very highly about his game and trusting that his progression is going to be there at the next level, and that he can be that sort of number 2 defensive tackle day 1. So I like Levi. And then number 1 is, no surprise, Christian Barmore. Now, I was talking up some of these other guys, but I really can't stress enough the gap between Barmore and Levi Onwuzurike. Barmore is the only first-round player on this list. I'm not even thinking about Levi Onwuzurike until maybe like the teens in the second round. Christian Barmore, I start to think about him at like that 15 range. And there's a combination of reasons for that. Number 1 is that gap. This class is, I'm talking these guys up, but to be honest, it's just not a great defensive tackle class. Sorry to be a buzzkill after I just talked about these guys, but Barmore is that dude that it's like day 1, he can be not just a number 2 defensive tackle, but he could actually potentially be a number 1. He stacks up right with like Javon Kinlaw last year, with Derek Brown. And I think Javon Kinlaw is a pretty decent comparison as far as just his value and what you can expect. Now, I think Kinlaw was actually a 23-year-old redshirt senior. He had a little bit of a late development curve, whereas Christian Barmore had kind of the expected development curve at Alabama. He's coming out as a sophomore redshirt, and the play strength and power that he plays with at that age, it's just rare, and the get-off he has. So my comparison for him is Jarrell Casey. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Casey, because he hasn't been all that for the last few years, but he, at a point in time, was one of the premier pass rushers in the league. Now, that's a very much a stylistic comp. It's not a perfect physical comparison, but I also think that's kind of his upside, is a top 10 defensive tackle and maybe a top 5 pass rushing defensive tackle. Casey always was a little bit upright. He is, like Barmore, kind of thinner from the waist down. And Barmore is not a good run defender. Jarrell Casey, to be honest, was never a great run defender. He was all about that quickness and power on third down to get after the quarterback. And that's what I see in Christian Barmore. The kind of high-end comp for him is going to be Chris Jones, who's very similar physically, 6'5", really lengthy on the interior, awesome get-off, powerful player with the quickness to do some other things as well from a finesse rush standpoint. So to me, Christian Barmore is a day 1 impact as a pass rusher. I have almost no questions about that, and frankly, he's being a little bit underrated as far as how good of a pass rusher he is because of the small sample size. He's a sophomore. He was just becoming the best version of himself by the time it was ready for him to turn pro. So Barmore for me, first round talent. He's going to be a top 20 pick in this class. He's going to be a guy that, depending how much attention some of these draft analysts are paying, are going to say that that's early. But when you really look at him compared to the rest of this class, and the fact that he's the only guy on this list where I'm like, you take him day one, and he is a high-end pass rusher, you just can't really find that. So Christian Barmore, first on the list of defensive tackles. I'm going to cut this up into a clip on YouTube, so you might be watching this in a separate video. If you are, please do hit that like button down below, and consider checking out the rest of the show, because we are about to get into my guys and not my guys for the 2021 NFL Draft. And let's do that with that transition. So we're going to do this exactly like we did for the offensive side of the ball. And again, this isn't like, if he's a not my guy, it's not that I think he's going to bust or that I would never draft the guy. It's just kind of looking at public perception based on my own evaluations. And my not my guys are basically guys that I probably will not or would not end up drafting if it was in my control, just because I value other guys higher and I like other guys' skill sets a little better. And with the my guys, it's guys that I love, guys that I probably would draft, guys that get me excited that I'd be pounding the table for on draft day. And it can be anywhere from a first-round pick to a seventh-round pick. So let's get into it, starting with the interior defensive line, who we just kind of talked about. So some of these guys we'll be glossing over. But my guys here are Osa Odigizua, who a lot of people have as third, fourth round. I think, second, third round for Osa Odigizua in the right scheme fit. Milton Williams, same thing. He's my number 5 interior defensive lineman. Some people don't have him in the top 10. Maybe it's that transition as a guy that did play a lot of edge in college, kind of projecting a little bit there. But those athletic traits to me are just the types of traits you want to bet on. And I love his development track as well. And then Tyler Shelvin is definitely a my guy. I don't think I've seen anybody that has Shelvin as a second to a third round pick as a top, let alone top 6 defensive tackle, a top 10 interior defensive lineman. I just feel incredibly safe about what you're getting there. But again, nose tackle. So if you don't want that 340-pound, 350-pound space-eating nose tackle in your system, you're not going to value this guy. And then we've got Jonathan Marshall. I saw him in the 20s for the consensus rankings. He's 12th for me. So he's out of Arkansas. He is a redshirt senior, but he's just a disruptive player. He tested really well, and then I loaded up his tape, and you can just see that he's kind of got the it factor that you look for. Flies off the ball. He's just a handful. He does not have a plan. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He doesn't really defend the run with any discipline, but he's got that explosiveness, and it's not even so much that I'm like drafting him to develop and think he can be like a great 3-down player. He has that physical potential, but he is a redshirt senior. I'm not expecting that to all of a sudden click. But for a guy that you can get in the 4th, 5th round to be maybe your third defensive tackle, if you're a good coach, you just say, I'm going to put you as an inside shade in between the guard and the center, or in between the tackle and the guard, and I just want you to shoot this gap as hard as you freaking can. And he's a disruptive player like that. So I don't know if he's ever going to refine his game or anything, but he's got some rare traits as a pass rusher, and he's not like useless as a run defender either. Like he's not, I feel like I'm talking about it as like he's just a bazooka that the coach can use and shoot through a gap. That's a strength of his, but he does have other strengths to his game as well. He's not a, dumb football player or whatever. Then we got Jared Goldwire, my number 15 interior defensive lineman here out of Louisville. He's another kind of conversion projection, but not like a Milton Williams where he's going from edge to interior. Jared Goldwire actually played nose tackle for Louisville, who is becoming kind of infamous for having undersized guys. They've got these tiny running backs. Tutu Atwell's like 150 pounds. So now on the defensive line even, Jared Goldwire was asked to play nose tackle at 6'5", 293 pounds. What the heck, right? You would expect him getting double teamed with a thin, long frame built closer to an edge player to just get absolutely bodied in there, and he didn't. He could, anchor against double teams. He would get off blocks and actually defended the run really well, especially considering his size. So really impressed by his willingness to do that as a role, but that's not how NFL teams are going to use him. He's going to be more of a 3 technique. He could even play 4-3 defensive end on earlier downs. So I like his athletic profile. He can move. He's not a burner or anything, so he's not going to get bend around the edge, but he can set the edge as a run defender, absolutely. And I like his transition with that experience, having played nose tackle at a really high level with athletic traits and length at 6'5". I like how he projects as more of a defensive end in a 3-4 system because he's got those experiences. But I think going to a different role where he's not going to get double teamed constantly as a pass rusher, where he actually did some good pass rush stuff when he got opportunities at Louisville, but he was constantly doubled in that defense. So just a guy that I think at a different scenario is going to really succeed and actually has some pretty good upside. My comparison for him is Dean Lowry. So just a heads up, at this portion of the video, my computer said, the next hour and a half, camera, we ain't about it. We're going to just opt out of this one. So basically, it's going to be audio. From this point on, it all changes. You just can't see me flap around and move my hands. So, hope you are enjoying the show and continue to enjoy the show. My comparison for him is Dean Lowry, who's been he got a good second contract for Green Bay in that same role I'm talking about as a 3-4 defensive end who plays a lot of 3 and 4-eye techniques. Then for the not my guys, Davion Nixon makes the list only because I just think people are overdrafting him a lot as kind of this top 50 player. I think I saw him as the number 1 interior defensive lineman. It might have been Bucky Brooks or someone. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but to have him over Christian Barmore to me is just insanity. So he's a not my guy. He could be a good pro. I think he'll be in the league for a while, but I just have a hard time imagining him being an impact player. And then Kyrus Tonga, I noticed, is pretty high in the consensus rankings. I have him number 22. He's at a BYU, so that's Kyrus Tonga. I'm trying to get better at repeating these guys' names because I know some of you guys in the audio podcast can lose track, but he's fine. I describe him as a bull in a china shop. He tested well. He's 6'2", 320 pounds. But there's a couple things with him. Number one, he's got really short arms, which I noticed on tape, and then I checked again. I was like, 31-inch arms. He just kind of throws himself, like with his shoulders. He doesn't have much of a pass rush plan. He's also not particularly quick. So, he tested well. He's got good get off. He has potential as a power rusher. But compare him to who we described earlier, Jonathan Marshall. Marshall, to me, is much better in that role of I'm just going to put you in the B gap or, as a 3 technique. I want you to just shoot this thing. I would much rather have Jonathan Marshall doing that than Kyrus Tonga, especially because I can probably get Marshall a lot later than Tonga. But with those 31-inch arms, it's going to be tough for him to be a high-end bull rusher, and he doesn't have a whole lot of discipline in anything else he does. So I actually have a 6th round to a priority free agent grade on him, and I've seen him as kind of a 4th or 5th round prospect. That's just a little bit rich for me based on what I saw from him. I didn't see much of a game plan there from his tape. Now into the edge group, and I'm excited. I get to talk about Gregory Rousseau. He is my guy in this class. And I do this hesitantly because I acknowledge the boom or bust aspect of Gregory Rousseau. He's one of the most, if not the most, unique defensive prospect evaluations we've maybe ever seen in the NFL draft for a variety of reasons, but COVID being number one. He played 1 year after being recruited as an athlete, potentially someone people saw as a tight end receiver maybe because he's fast and he's tall. But just too stiff, and that's what he gets criticized for, is his lateral agility sucks. I will say that. His lateral agility sucks. He's not going to, put together all these Von Miller moves and be this finesse rusher. That's not his game. And everyone is trying to find those players, but I'm going to go on a little tangent here and credit Danny Kelly of The Athletic. He was of The Ringer. He was talking about how these speed rushers and these finesse bend guys, they're dying off in the NFL because of RPOs, horizontal passing games. Offensive linemen are getting quicker and just more athletic and better able to handle that type of stuff. So like let's just say, Quincy Roche's in this class, or even on a high end like a Harold Landry, who I loved coming out. He just hasn't been able to become that high impact pass rusher. These guys that need to bend around the edge or win with a spin move or a swim move, they're dying off, man. They don't win as quickly as you need to get to the quarterback. Whereas power, you can impact the pocket, you can get your hands in the face of the quarterback. In the case of a Gregory Rousseau, you can slide inside and line up on the guard. The quickest way to the quarterback is through the inside. Aaron Rodgers has talked a lot about how edge pressure, that's the other thing, is these quarterbacks are so mobile now that the guys come off the edge with that bend. Well, all the tackle has to do is step up and he takes them out of the play. So that's just another aspect working against these speed rushers. But Aaron Rodgers has talked all the time about how, like, I don't mind the guy that shoots around the outside and tries to bend inside, because I can just step up and create a better angle for my tackle. But when Aaron Donald shoots up through the center, there's nothing I can do. There's nowhere for me to go. So Gregory Rousseau was incredible at doing that as a freshman who had just spent 1 year learning a new position after being a two-way player coming out of high school. So there's that. I think the speed rushers, the bendy, twitchy outside guys, there's room for those guys in the NFL. But I think everybody's looking for that guy when the NFL, that's not really where the game's at. Like Jason Owe has no power at all, and everyone's freaking out about his speed and athleticism. It's like he can't get to the quarterback because even though he's got 4.3 speed, by the time he gets there, the quarterback just stepped up and ran right past him. So that's another thing with Gregory Rousseau is, I'm not going to say I've never seen a defensive end with the ability to control his blocker like he does, but for a freshman, he showed a combination of a few things where, I thought with his lengthy arms, he was not going to be able to generate any power or push guys back. That was not the case. More often than not, he got his hands inside and was in control. Now, he didn't always, pull off a rip out of that or do a swim or a spin, but like I always say, it was freshman tape. So he's going to develop some of those things. He talked about on the PFF 2-for-1 Drafts podcast about how he was frustrated that he did opt out. He's not regretting the opt-out, but saying that those are aspects to his game that he acknowledged that's a weakness and is stuff that he's excited to work on. And he talked about all the guys that he's watched and he's studied, and he's excited to prove people wrong that he will develop more of those finesse moves, if you will. But back to his long arms and his power, he controls his guy, but he was smart for a freshman. And I'm sorry if I'm going in circles here, but for a freshman to have the discipline as a rusher that he showed as far as not running past the quarterback, it was really impressive. And this all comes back to what I was talking about with these quarterbacks being able to step up and just manipulate the angles. Well, Rousseau wasn't having any of that. He would push his guy back, and the second the quarterback would step up, he was awesome at all of these. He gets criticized for all of these cleanup sacks, right? Well, there's a difference between another guy created a pressure and the quarterback just kind of walked into you, and you created a little push on the edge. The quarterback felt like he could step up past you, and you said, basically playing like a run defender and just saying, see a tackle, long, 82-inch wingspan, strong arms, grabbing the quarterback's arm and just dragging him down with one arm. Like, he was wildly impressive with some of those stuff that it probably just doesn't get enough credit as far as that's a rare trait that he has, which shows up in run defense constantly. So the strength he has in his arms is really what I get most excited about him with, combined with something that nobody ever talks about with Gregory Rousseau, and that's the fact that he has really good get-off. And with that length and arm strength that he has, the sky is the limit for this guy, to be completely honest. So I always try to remind people of this because his pro day workout, yeah, he had a 7.5 3-cone. not great. Not great. It's probably why he's not playing receiver or tight end, because he can't move laterally. It's not his game at all. But there's so many other strengths in there to focus on that 3-cone. It's like DK Metcalf all over again at a different position. But his 10-yard split, which just might be the most singular valuable testing number, other than maybe broad jump, where he was a little bit on the underwhelming side, but not like terrible. He had a similar broad jump to Joe Tryon, by the way, who everyone's freaking out about. At 115 inches, Tryon was at 116. So anyway, where the get off, his 10-yard split on his 40-yard dash, if I sort this thing, he was tied for second in this class. Tied for second behind only Andre Mintz, who we're actually going to talk about in just a second. But you're now pairing long, strong arms with some of the best get-off in this class. He could have, this is maybe hyperbole, and I might regret saying this, but he could be as good as Myles Garrett, who, by the way, he's more quick than Gregory Rousseau, but Myles Garrett is not a finesse rusher. He's not. He wins in a lot of the same ways that Gregory Rousseau does. So he is my guy. I understand the risk aspect. There are parts of his game that he has to develop, but I say this all the time. Freshman tape, everybody. I think there is a better than not chance that if he played in his his sophomore year, that he would have wowed people with his development and his growth. And the dude's putting in the time in the gym. I don't know if you've seen a picture of him recently. He looks like Myles Garrett physically. So he is my guy. I still think he's a first-round talent. There are red flags. I will acknowledge he has bust potential. I'm not going to hide from that, but I'd still take the guy in the first round. And the reactions, like I mocked him to the Jets at 23 in the draft, and the reactions are like, oh, I had to stop watching the video after you drafted that guy. I think I threw up in my mouth. What's with the hate on Gregory Rousseau? I don't get it. There are things to like about Gregory Rousseau. I'm sorry he doesn't play like, Von Miller. You know who also isn't a particularly finessey rusher? Khalil Mack. Yeah. We mentioned Myles Garrett. It's not all about the ability to perform a swim move and a spin move, guys. So I like Gregory Rousseau a lot. That's nothing new here on this channel. I've lowered him a little bit because the 3-cone was underwhelming, but I'm just not all that worried about a 3-cone drill. We've done this thing before. Okay, so then we got Cam Sample. Very similar thing here. Now, he has slid down my board just a little bit, but I still really like Cam Sample. He's definitely my guy. People usually have him as like a 4th or 5th rounder. To me, I'm thinking about him at the back end of the second. Let me just resort my list here. Cam Sample is now edge number 10. But I just love his combination of get off, power, and length and size. Like he to me is very similar to a Matthew Judon, to Pernell McPhee, kind of a really poor man's Khalil Mack in a lot of ways, just as that he plays a lot of outside linebacker, hands inside, driving you to the ground, or driving you backwards. He has a rare combination of traits there that I think are going to translate really well to the NFL for a lot of the reasons we just talked about with Gregory Rousseau, as far as people underrating power and the ability to bull rush. Then we've got a couple other guys kind of similar there. Victor Demukage out of Duke, and very similar. There's a trend with some of these guys, but he's a little different. 6'2", 262 pounds. So he is short and stocky, right? But he does have 33-inch arms, which is pretty good. And he was a productive pass rusher at Duke. He's really quick off the ball. So he's just got very active, strong hands. He comes in low to the ground. He's powerful. He's productive. He's a smart dude. And to get him in the 5th, 6th round, I think he can be... I'm not going to come up with a perfect comp on the fly here, but think of what Trey Hendrickson was to the Saints as a 3rd rusher that surprises people as a mid-round pick. Hendrickson was a little higher, like a 3rd-round pick, but Just a guy that comes in and surprises some people with his ability to get after the quarterback when he gets one-on-one opportunities. Not a super high upside player or anything like that, but just a player I like. I appreciate his game. And then Raymond Johnson is another one of these 6'2", 260 pounds. So I like him for virtually all the same reasons I like Demukage, which is a strong dude that comes in low to the earth with really active hands, and he's actually a really good run defender as well. So Raymond Johnson out of Georgia Southern as like a, talking about like a day 3 pick here. So nothing crazy. But I was higher on Raymond Johnson as someone that consensus had him in like the 40s. To me, he's 25th. And then I will mention now a speed rusher type, Andre Mintz out of Vanderbilt, who he was the guy that had the highest 10-yard split. But I had actually done his eval before I saw that workout, and I liked him before the workout because this dude has an elite first step. Elite of the elite, which that 153 10-yard split shows it off. So he is a guy that as a speed rusher on third down, you slide him in there, you put him in that wide 9 technique, and you say, go. See if this tackle can get to the edge and block you. And if they do, you're going to be able to stunt guys in. Like you're creating a problem just by his ability to put his hand in the dirt and just sprint at the quarterback in a straight line. It is rare. Now he's 6'3", 253 pounds as well. So he's not like Vic Beasley or anything. Like it's not like all the tackle has to do is get there and shove him and dive after him with his right arm. Like Mintz has enough kind of bend and power to shrug that off. Like you have to actually get in front of this guy. It's not just a matter of, putting a hand on him. And some of that is reflected in his game because Vanderbilt ran a stupid scheme. They ran one of these hybrid 3-3-5 defenses. So he was either playing hand in the dirt as a basically 3-4 defensive end as like a 4 technique. That's not his game. Like he's a speed rusher type. But he actually defended the run really well from those positions. Like he got his hands inside and, played with some discipline. So I think he can play on early downs, especially with that experience as kind of an overmatched, undersized edge guy. Playing the same position a lot of times that Dio Odeingbo played, who's like 280 pounds. So that was impressive. I think he can be a 3-down player. He doesn't have a versatile skill set, but he's a unique player that to get him in the 6th round, I'm taking a chance on Andre Mintz. I actually have a 5th to a 7th on him. Really intriguing player with some rare traits and some good toughness as well. And then not my guys on the edge, Jason Owe. I mean, that one's obvious. There's a small group of people that just buy into the traits here. But for me, I just can't get there. Comparing him to like Gregory Rousseau, because I could see some people saying, why are you so confident that Rousseau can develop his game and not with Jason Owe? It's because with Rousseau, I actually saw the power. And there was production there, right? Like he had double-digit sacks. It wasn't all good, but Rousseau actually had production, and I think there was a reason for it. Like he actually could push a pocket, and he had the power as a rusher, and he was really effective when he slid inside. His quickness was there from the inside as a rusher at Miami. So there were reasons for Rousseau's production that I think could grow. With Jason Owe, I actually think he has just as good of a chance to be a star tight end in the NFL than a star defensive end. Basically because he's so raw as a defensive end. He did nothing on tape where I'm like, that'll translate. A 4.37 40 time, it doesn't get you that far in the NFL. So, especially defensive end. Dude's a freak. He's really fast in a straight line. But he does nothing that I like. I don't like his game. He dodges blockers in the run game, which leads to splash plays, but he gets bodied against the run. He has no play strength. He has no power as a rusher. He has no pass rush moves. So you're just hoping that he can channel this crazy athleticism into being a defensive end. A great coach is going to be able to get it out of him. I still will take him in the second round. Like, I think he can play football in some universe. But I can't get behind his game when there's a lot of other edge players that I just like a lot more than him. So I'll take a chance on him in the second round. But he doesn't even enter my mind in the first round. He's the 50th overall player on my board. And I actually just moved Joe Tryon over him because he plays with power and he's productive. To me, it's just too big of a projection. And I just think he has so much to learn that you might as well try him at tight end because you're teaching him, you got to teach him how to play the game either way. And then next on my list here is Jordan Smith out of UAB. You're probably sensing a theme here. I mean, he is a speed rusher. He's got the length, but he just does not convert speed to power. He was really underwhelming at the Senior Bowl. I was not impressed. I was surprised to find out that people thought he was a top 10 edge rusher after the Senior Bowl because he just didn't stand out. He couldn't beat the guys that were there. And then his tape, he's fast off the ball. He's got the bend you look for. He's lengthy. But he also tested really poorly. It didn't change my view that he's really athletic, but it is a red flag that if you can't, I think I've talked about this on previous podcasts, but for a player like Jordan Smith, who I'm banking on you, number one, putting on play strength and being able to get power in your game eventually, that comes from the weight room and preparation in the gym off the field. And beyond that, it shows a lack of coachability and the ability to work on technique. So if he wants to become a better finesse rusher, same thing. A workout is not just about your athletic traits. It's about your ability to work on a technique and put it into effect and produce results, which is at the end of the day what a lot of the NFL is about, is practice, repetition, coachability. So Jordan Smith should have come out and run a 4.55 40. He ran a 4.78. And I'm just going to check right now. I bet his 10-yard split was not as good as it should have been. I'm coming up with this on the fly. But I bet that his 10-yard split here, and this might be confirmation bias, but I bet it's sub 1.7, which his get off is way better than a 1.7 10-yard split. But what that tells me is that he did not put in the time to focus on his technique and run the best 40-yard dashes he could. Let's see. 1.77. Just calling this shit on the fly. Do you want to know where that ranks? Jordan Smith. That is it is tied for second worst out of 40 edge players on my board. And the last place is 1.78. So the reason I say that is because once he got going, he caught up, right? He ended up running a 4.78, which is fine. But that 10-yard split, he came out of his stance funny. He wasn't ready to go, and it hurt his time. So I'm not worried about his long speed, and I'm not worried about his get-off. It's on tape. But what does worry me is that inability to translate technique into results, which if you're drafting a player like this in Jordan Smith, who does not have any power, I want him to put in work in the weight room, and he doesn't really have any technique, I need to see that some point in the process here. You need to show me that you are going to work on your game and not just be this lengthy freak athlete and an underachiever, frankly. So I like the traits, but people have him, I think, third round. I got a fifth round grade on Jordan Smith. He is not a player that's shown the development track that I'm banking on. So I'm definitely lower on Jordan Smith. And then Dayo Odeyingbo, to be honest, I didn't see it with him. And a lot of people like him. But he played in this kind of weird hybrid Vanderbilt defense where he was asked to be sort of this hybrid defensive end type. And I didn't walk away this game oh yeah, that's a trait that'll really translate well. He wasn't a great run defender, but their system kind of set guys up to fail. But Andre Mintz had a better run defense grade than Ogundeji, and he's 25 pounds lighter and does not have the length. So that was a concern to me, just kind of the motor, down-to-down run defense, the discipline there. And then I didn't see great get-off and arm extension and power as a rusher. What I did see was good quickness for a bigger guy that when you slide him inside as an interior rusher, he can produce. And that does come with value. I think he's a draftable prospect, but people have him like third round or whatever. I don't know. I just can't get behind that when that's a pretty replicable, I think that's the right word, like replaceable, replicable. You can find other people that do that. And it's not like he was elite rushing from the interior, but I think that's going to have to be his game, is that bigger bodied 4-3 end, where I think he has to improve his motor and run defense. And then I don't think he's going to be a great pass rusher from the edge. Now, he could become a really good interior rusher if he really works at it, but there's projects similar to that are in that range of, what do I have on him? I have him as my 29th edge rusher with a 5th to a 7th round grade. There's a lot of guys on this list that I think are comparable projects. So I'm definitely lower on Dayo Odeyingbo out of Vanderbilt. And then the last guy here is Adentakumbo, sounds like Antetokounmpo, Ogundeje out of Notre Dame, who basically I just don't think he's draftable, to be honest. Let's see, do I have a draftable grade on him? He is my 37th edge with a priority free agent grade. Because I think what's happening here is he's getting profiled with a lot of these Notre Dame defensive ends. There was, I think it was 2 last year, right? The guy that went to the Bengals, a really good run defender, very similar player, 6'4", 260 pounds. What's his name? And I liked him. Let the record show that I liked him as a mid-round pick, as an early down run defender. Let me get his name, because it's not on the top of my tongue right now. Khalid Kareem was a 5th round pick last year. I thought excellent value as like an early down run defender. This year you got Dalen Hayes, is very similar. So I think he's getting he's getting kind of typecast into that bigger bodied Notre Dame defensive end group. And people are just like, 6'4", 35-inch arms. He's 260 pounds. Probably just another typical big-bodied Notre Dame defensive end. The problem with him is he has no power, like no play strength at all. He gets pushed off his spot. He doesn't shed blocks, and he doesn't even have the power as a rusher that, who did we just say? Khalid Kareem had, or Dalen Hayes in this draft. So I think he's getting lumped into that group when I watch him play, I was strangely underwhelmed when I expected him to be that guy. So maybe it's just kind of groupthink, borderline lazy scouting there. Maybe I'm just wrong and I didn't see it correctly. But yeah, Adentakumbo Ogundeje out of Notre Dame. And I think he was at the Senior Bowl as well and was also wildly underwhelming. I think him and Jordan Smith, actually, I kept getting them confused because they had the gold helmet and they're both, long. And neither of them, I was like, what do they do? Like, they don't win. What's going on here? Who are these guys? They look terrible. So both those guys, not my guys. So next up, we have the linebacker group. Just 4 guys in total. 2 my guys, not going to come as a surprise here. We've got Monty Rice. I accidentally opened Twitter, and it's distracting me. Let me close that. But this is not going to be a surprise if you watched my top 10 linebackers video. Just for the sake of time, I will just refer you to that video, so you can go check that out. But Monty Rice and Isaiah McDuffie, my guys in this class, especially Monty Rice, might be my guy. I think he's a 2nd-round player. A lot of people see him as a 4th-round player. I've compared him to Eric Kendricks, so I really like Monty Rice. And then my not my guys are 2 players that are really just not my guys because I like Monty Rice so much, but it's Nick Bolton, who is sometimes getting mocked in the 1st round. I can't get there. I think he can be good, but there's just a lot to come along with him, and these linebackers get just absolutely exploited in the NFL with play action, misdirection, all these crazy athletes that they see. It's so hard. It might be becoming the hardest position to play as a rookie in the NFL. Even more, hot take here, even more than like quarterback, because these quarterbacks are so good now and these teams are scheming them up so much. Linebacker might be becoming the new position where it's like it is impossible for these linebackers to be consistent. And I think Nick Bolton is going to be a guy that really bites the cheese on play action. He does get kind of targeted in the RPO game where he comes up and is a little bit too aggressive. And he's not like an elite athlete. He doesn't have the size to be like this phenomenal run defender. So I like him in the second round, don't get me wrong. And I think he can be a really good football player. But there's no way he's a first-round prospect to me, not in the modern NFL. And then Jabril Cox, he made this list just because I don't get the excitement for him as like a top 50 player. He's good in coverage. He's not an elite athlete. He's a good athlete. He's lengthy. He looks kind of like a safety at times, but he's a bit of a liability in the run game. He's actually really similar to the linebacker out of LSU that the Browns took in the third round, who was fine, but a bit of a project. Jabril Cox and those guys, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but I got Cox at third to a fourth round pick. I think he'd be a good cover linebacker, but I just don't get the excitement for him as like this high upside, exceptional top 50 pick. So two guys that are unfortunately not my guys that I think could work out, but I'm not drafting them in the top 50 where a lot of people are mocking him. So that was Nick Bolton and Jabril Cox. Okay, cornerback. So I have a lot of cornerbacks here. I think I'm going to take a short break and then get into these corners because I have like 10 my guys here with corners. So I want to refresh, and we'll come back and do the cornerbacks and wrap with the safeties. Okay, let's have some fun and do these corners. No surprise here for anybody that's been following me since like my first mock draft, Asante Samuel Jr. I put him in the first round of my mock draft 1.0, and people are like, what are you doing? He's a tiny third-round cornerback prospect. I'm like, no. This dude has elite athletic traits and some of the best zone instincts you'll see for a corner. This guy very clearly studied his dad growing up, who was just a ball hawk for the Patriots and Eagles too, right? But, yeah, man, he might be undersized. He's going to be an acquired taste. A lot of teams just have height cutoffs, and they don't believe in a guy like Asante Samuel. But it's been shown around the league that you don't have to be 6'1" to be an elite cornerback. Jair Alexander is the poster child, and I think Asante Samuel has the upside of a Jair Alexander. You know, maybe not quite as fast as far as the long speed, but I think a low-end comp, and this doesn't sound amazing, but there's a corner for the Rams last year, and I can picture him, but I'm going to have to look up his name because he's 5'9" for the Rams, and he plays the perfect scheme fit for where Jair, I think, can land. Darius Williams. Kind of ashamed I couldn't think of that, but the Rams defense with Brandon Staley, who's going off to the Chargers, their defensive coordinator had or is going to Green Bay. These are ties to the Vic Fangio system that is replicated in Denver and in Chicago. New Orleans and Kansas City kind of do a lot of this stuff, and this is the off-zone coverage system where you are running not press coverage. You're going to have your corners off the line of scrimmage, usually 8 to 10 yards off. You're going to run a lot of cover 4, cover 3 match, and you might mix in some man coverage depending on how you feel. But you're not running a lot of press cover 3. You're not running a lot of press man. You're not asking these corners to get in their face and be physical. It is a very smart, methodical system where you're basically saying, we're going to back up a little bit. We're going to pick up everything that comes at us. We're going to pass these things off. And this is basically going to slowly turn everything they run, basically slowly turns into man coverage. But it's a really nice modern scheme because all of these bunch formations and the quick hitting stuff and all these like premium athletes that can just throw all these different wrinkles at man coverage and cover 3. This system is great for basically, keeping everything in front of you and not getting beat deep, while also giving these corners really good opportunities to read the quarterback's eyes in zone coverage and jump stuff. And that's Asante Samuel in a nutshell. I don't want him pressing guys a ton. I want him kind of off the ball and playing that cover 4 quarters corner. And there's a lot of systems around the league that will absolutely value that. So that's where I come in on Asante Samuel. Really smart guy. I just went on a tangent about systems, but I think you guys appreciate that kind of stuff. And he's going to be a basically Darius Williams on steroids is my comp for Asante Samuel with a high-end comp of like Jair Alexander, because I think Samuel can run man, but I don't know if he'll ever be as good in press as Jair is, just because he's not as long. But both are under 6 foot tall. Anyway, that's the Asante Samuel wrap. More my guys here at the corner position. Paulson Adebo, one of the most underrated COVID opt-out players, right there with his teammate Walker Little. Paulson Adebo, in his, it would have been, was it his sophomore year? I think it was his sophomore year, because he's a senior technically. His sophomore year, he was an elite corner, the best cornerback in college football his sophomore year, with the length and the speed and the ball skills and the kind of intuition and ability to break on routes and stuff, like just all around looked like a potential top 20 corner. And then his junior year was not as good, basically. There was all these crazy expectations, and it just, corner fluctuates year to year, right? We see it every year. We have a new number one corner. Right now it's Jair. It was Jalen Ramsey 2 years ago. It was Stephon Gilmore last year. It's just kind of the nature of the beast, of the position. You're going to get beat. And that's what happened to Paulson Adebo. As a junior in college, bit the cheese on some double moves, got beat deep a couple times, but it's not like he had a bad year, right? He was still good, but just the interceptions weren't there, and he got beat a couple more times, pretty bad. But that's, for a young player like that, it's fine. It's fine. And even the best corners bite on a double move and get beat once in a while. It's just a really difficult position to be a lockdown player. It just doesn't exist anymore. And then he opts out for the final year, which you can't really blame him, right? And he clearly spent that time getting his ass ready, because listen to his workout. Probably a better workout than people expected. A 4.45 40, which I don't think he has elite speed, but I think that's accurate. I think he has, if you want to talk Madden, he's got 90 speed, which is perfectly fine for a corner to clear. Basically 4.5 is kind of the threshold that you want to clear in the modern NFL. Good 10-yard split, not great, 1.57, but a 6.69 3-cone, a 4.13 shuttle, 121-inch broad jump, 36.5-inch vertical, and he even, just because he felt like messing around, put up 18 bench reps. Really good workout for Paulson Adebo. This dude is a really solid athlete with length. Keep in mind, he's 6'1". He's every bit of 6'1", and he's got really good ball skills, really good IQ. He could fit the same system that we just talked about with Asante Samuel, where he's running a lot of that cover 3 off coverage with cover 4. It's a lot of what he did at Stanford. But I also think that he's a guy that could surprise as a press corner as well. I look at Seattle with their second-round pick. If they could get Paulson Adebo, I think they'd be very happy. But personally, I wouldn't let him get that far. If I'm San Francisco, I'm taking him at 43, keeping him there in San Francisco, coming up the street from Stanford. So Paulson Adebo is one of my favorite players in this class. He's one of those underrated COVID opt-out players because he's just been kind of dismissed a little bit. When if he played, I think he would have been really good and potentially a first-round player. You might be potentially getting a top 25 player in this class that just has some of that fog of war due to the COVID opt-out. Next up, we have Marco Wilson. Simply put, to me, he is the kind of athlete that you gamble on in the NFL. Not a good comp at all, but reminds me a little bit of who's the safety corner for the Chiefs? The Darius. Oh man, I struggle with his first name. I'm gonna look this one up. You can't blame me for this one. It's a tough name. It's on the tip of my tongue, but not Shavarius Ward. L'Jarius Sneed, who the Chiefs took in the 4th round last year, and I was like, that's the kind of athlete you want to gamble on. And he actually was the best rookie corner because you know what happened? They said, you are a super fast athlete. You can run with anybody, but Louisiana Tech, they had you playing safety. Screw that. We're just going to line you up and say, run with this guy. Don't worry about the scheme. Don't worry about anything. Just run with this guy and play football. And for me, if you can do that with Marco Wilson, as opposed to asking him to do what he did at Florida at this complex cover 3 system where they're running cover 6 there, cover 9 here, they're having him play all these different zones and That's not his game. He is a freak athlete who just wants to get in someone's face, be scrappy, and cover a man-to-man. So that's Marco Wilson. And he has the penalty thing. Like he has some question marks as far as his technique never really grew, and the whole boneheaded mistake that maybe cost them a shot at a national championship where they were undefeated and they got a stop in the fourth quarter against LSU with the lead. And they got to stop. It was over. The game was over. And a guy lost his shoe on LSU's offense. And he picks up the shoe and chucks it. And it was a 15-yard automatic first down penalty. And Florida ended up losing the game on a field goal. And I don't think Florida fans are big Marco Wilson fans. But I'm a fan of Marco Wilson's game. That's just the kind of athleticism you gamble on. It's going to cost you probably a third-round pick, maybe even a late second. Which late second's a little rich, but I've also seen a lot of people in the draft community with him fourth, fifth round. No, he is just, the way I described it on my draft board is there's very few players and humans that can move the way he does. It's Jair Alexander-esque. It's Darrelle Revis in his prime-esque. Just his fluidity and his fluidity and his speed, it's legit, and it pops you in the face. So he's an interesting player. But he's definitely someone I'd be pounding the table for. Then I got Ambry Thomas. I was really surprised coming out of Michigan here to see Ambry Thomas is like in the 20s for a lot of people's cornerback rankings. He's actually 11th for me. And I think he's really sound. His press, just his technique in press as far as, keeping the right posture with his back, landing his jabs while not stopping his feet. It's really sound. He's not the lengthiest guy in this class, but I think that gives you a lot of scheme flexibility for teams that do like to press, and he's long enough to play that cover 3 system. Now, he is actually much more comfortable with his back turned to the quarterback. A lot of these guys, like we described with Samuel, Paulson Adebo, they're much more comfortable in that off zone where they can keep an eye on the quarterback, kind of see the routes developing, and then use their ability to transition and kind of break on balls. Ambry Thomas is much more of that traditional man cover guy where he's going to get in your face and he's comfortable kind of flipping around, feeling out the route, and trying to kind of anticipate what's coming, which is probably harder to find, and that's probably why he comes up my board a little bit. He's comfortable in phase. He's not an elite athlete, but he's certainly a good enough athlete. So he to me is just a really sound corner that I think can start sooner rather than later. With some decent upside as well. So I like Ambry Thomas a lot out of Michigan. This corner class for me, I think I'm just higher on in general. I get really excited about these guys. So then you got Trey Brown. He was just, I will never forget Trey Brown's Senior Bowl performance because when I do those one-on-ones for the receiver versus the corners, so much of it is like that corner never stood a chance. Like these are one-on-one drills setting the corner up to fail. But Trey Brown had the best corner performance at the Senior Bowl I've ever seen. He was getting in guys' face. He was intercepting balls. He was sticking with guys on like just impossible routes to cover. Ultra competitive dude. He's older. I think he's I saw a report that he was 25, and I looked it up and it wasn't true. I think he's only 22, 23. But he's an experienced guy out of Oklahoma. Smart guy in zone. Can run man coverage just like we saw at the Senior Bowl. And he's really effective as a run defender. He's scrappy and he tackles well. He's just a tough-ass dude who I think is underrated because he's shorter. He's 5'10", but he's not like some 5'8" slot corner. Like he can play outside. He can play slot. He's tough. He's super quick. He's got good technique. He's a little grabby, a little overly physical at times. But I'm fine. I'll trade that. I'd rather have the guy that's tough and is going to have a short memory and trust his technique in phase, as opposed to the guy that gets a penalty and forgets how to play football, Kevin King, for example. But yeah, Trey Brown just a tough dude, 3rd, 4th round pick, and if he's your 4th corner, like hell yeah, the guy can play outside in any system. He can even press at 5'10". He does not back down. But I actually love his upside as a slot corner as well. So just all around good game. Not a high upside player necessarily just because he's got some of that lack of size, but just super fun player. Really just all around. I love watching Trey Brown. And it wasn't just a Senior Bowl. His tape was comparable. Thomas Graham. slot corner out of Oregon. Really what this comes down to is basically give me Thomas Graham in the 4th round over Elijah Molden in the 2nd round. I do think Molden's a better player, but I think Thomas Graham is a high upside, day 1 starter at slot with the combination of the quickness you look for to run man coverage, the IQ to run zone, and if you need a slot corner or you have a guy that his contract is up and you aren't sure if you want to pay him, Thomas Graham is the perfect day 3 pick. And he's got maybe a chance to contribute as like a safety or a dime safety as well. And then Darren Hall out of San Diego State and Rodarius Williams. These guys are very similar, so I actually have them 18th and 19th to put this in perspective. But I have a 3rd to a 4th round grade on Darren Hall, who's a better athlete than Rodarius Williams, and a 4th round grade on Rodarius Williams. These two guys have very similar games. They are that scheme fit that we described with that off-zone cover 4 quarters defense where they are just really – they have a combination of two things. They have a great understanding for route combinations and kind of risk management when in a quarters shell, but also have really smooth transition ability. They accelerate well. They can flip their hips and close on balls really quickly. So when they dissect things quickly, they can anticipate what routes are coming, and then they can get to spots really well in short areas. Now, these guys both lack the speed to be man-cover corners at a high level, and they lack some of the press ability. Rodarius Williams could get better as a press corner. He's got length. Darren Hall, a little more of a Kyle Kendall Fuller physical type. But yeah, just really heady players that in those systems that run a lot of quarters defense, off man, cover 3 zone, that's a great fit for those two players, and I like those guys early day 3. Then I have Brandon Echols, similar to what I talked about with Marco Wilson, but on a decreased scale. Echols is ranked in like the 40s typically. I've got him at 22 on my board, and I have I'm not going to go on the confirmation bias tangent. I will just admit that I have a confirmation bias towards Brandon Echols, but I think it's okay because I think it has an aspect of consistency to it. So Echols, when I was watching like Kelvin Joseph, I think I was watching Kyle Pitts, and I was watching, I watched a lot of Kentucky because it's SEC football. You see a lot of Kentucky tape as you're going through these guys. And multiple times I saw Brandon Echols run in space, and I was like, holy shit, that guy is flying. Like Henry Ruggs flying. Like track speed. How is he moving that fast type of speed? And I hadn't evaluated him yet or anything. He was pretty low on the corner board, which was one of the last positions I did. But I had it in my mind. I was like, that guy, the Echols dude for Kentucky, when we get to his eval, I'm excited to see how he uses this speed. And he doesn't really know what he's doing. He is kind of a track star type. He wasn't overly productive at Kentucky, but he wasn't bad. He really wasn't terrible. So the reason I said confirmation bias is, sure enough, he ran a 4.36. So you see the speed on tape, and then he goes out and runs a great 40 time. And he's quick, too. The 3-cone was sub 6, so I don't know. He's just, I say this a lot, but in the 5th, 6th round, take athletes that are worth gambling on because that's really what the cornerback position comes down to, is finding speed and quickness and guys that play fast on the field. And that to me is Brandon Echols, which is worth a day 3 gamble. Get him with a good secondaries coach and see what you can make of him. It really is as simple as that with him. But I know for sure that he is fast as hell. So I like that. And he's not like, super stiff either. He can move. He can transition in space, which could make him a really dangerous man corner someday. Then a couple more guys here. Jason Pinnock. I'm starting to hear some more guys talk about him, but he's actually my 25th corner, but I still have a 5th round grade on him, which puts in perspective, like, I really like this corner class. I tweeted about it, but I get overwhelmed actually by the amount of draftable grades. I have legit draftable grades on 41 corners. That's non-priority free agent grades. And then I have another 7 players that are like 6th to priority free agent round grades. But yeah, this cornerback class is really deep and fun and a lot of good athletes. So Jason Pinnock out of Pitt, another guy where it's like, doesn't really know what he's doing, but someone that can get up in your face in press coverage, flips his hips really well, has decent long speed, but he's 6 foot, 200 pounds. And, I think where he struggles the most is like his zone anticipation. But I think he projects really well into, I think he can play any scheme, but his highest upside to me is if Seattle gets him or one of these cover 3 teams where they get him to press and increase his zone coverage ability and utilize just kind of the nice size and athletic traits he has. But he was just very steady. I don't think he is a great corner, but I think he's closer to starting than a lot of people are giving him credit for. And then the last guy here is Nate Hobbs out of Illinois. Just uber quick. Think similar to what we talked about with Darren Hall. Off zone coverage. Physically speaking, he's incredibly similar to like the Fuller guys, Kendall and Kyle Fuller, 5'11", 195. Same idea. Smart, heady player, lots of experience, transitions really well in space, can close on balls. Not a press corner. He could probably run some man coverage for sure. But another guy that in a quarters system, love his fit. A lot of those guys in this class because that's kind of where the college game is going. And it might be a reason that this class is pretty deep at corner because it's just kind of the way the modern game goes. So that was a fun bit. Let's get into the not my guys for corner. And you'll see a theme here. But Efetu Melifonwu is a not my guy. He's my number 20 corner. He's really a not my guy. He might be my not my guy. If you put him in a press cover 3 system, the Seattle Seahawks, for example, he can be a good corner. He really can. So that's fine. And if that's your system, like if I was making my draft board for the Seattle Seahawks, yeah, Melifonwu would probably be like my 5th or 6th corner. So a lot of these corners, it's very scheme dependent. But he is so dependent to that system, in my opinion. He has just incredibly tight hips to the point where like I am worried about him like flipping his hips and getting vertical in press coverage when he does lose at the line of scrimmage. Like very Trey Flowers-esque for Seattle, who is so stiff. So I'm worried about that. He's very grabby. He's a smart player. He's good in zone with his like eyes to the QB and all that stuff. Like that's why he's kind of a fit in that system. But he also has like a glitch in his technique that on one hand it's a coachable thing, absolutely. But on the other hand, I think this glitch exists for a reason. And part of it is that tightness. And it was evidenced on tape and really showed up at the Senior Bowl. But Efetu Melifonwu opens up frustratingly soon. So what I'm talking about here is when he is playing off zone coverage, basically as a guy is approaching him and showing the look that he's going to run a vertical route, he flips, he turns towards the sideline and he'll change it up. He'll open up towards the sideline, he'll open up towards the middle of the field. But what this does is it makes it impossible for him to cover in-breakers, out-breakers, hitches, comebacks, because the second he opens up, that receiver can just pivot. And as long as they're going in the opposite direction of where he opened up, there's nothing Melifonwu can do. And he was doing this at the Senior Bowl. Receivers were having the time of their life because all they had to do was make it look like they were running a post or a go ball. And the second Melifonwu opens up, whoop, we're just going to go run that. We're going to run a crossing route. We're going to run an in route. And Melifonwu would just become burnt toast. And it's a super coachable thing. But at the same time, there's a lot of guys on this list that it's like, yeah, if we can coach him up, he's going to be great. So why is Melifonwu, who's kind of this freak athlete, not closer to, say, Brandon Echols, who's a freak athlete that in the right system can be a high upside player, but needs to be coached up? Why is that not lumped into there, for which he is for me? Melifonwu is just 2 spots above Brandon Echols. But yeah, that needs to be worked out. But I also think, I mentioned his inability to flip his hips and get vertical. I think that glitch in his technique is there for a reason. Either he started doing it, realizing that he kept getting beat deep because he can't be patient enough to see what route it's going to be and then flip and get vertical when it is vertical. Not to mention he doesn't have like the top speed to make up for it when he does get beat. So either he started doing it or Syracuse told him to. But I think that the reason that that's in his technique is there for a reason, because he can get beat deep. So I'm worried. I'm really worried about Obi Melifonwu. I think with the right coaching, with the right scheme fit, he can be a quality starter. He can be, I'm not going to say Richard Sherman, but just in that mold. Call it Byron Maxwell. Could maybe be Efetu Melifonwu. But I'm worried. I'm worried about a lot of his just tightness and just overall athletic ability for him. I don't get all that excited about him. And then we've got Israel Mukuamu. Wow, he was a hard watch, man. 6'4" corner, 212 pounds. Some people have him as like a top 20 corner. He's 36th for me. I have a 6th to a 7th round grade on him. Now, again, cover 3, press man system. That's Seattle, the Raiders now, the Cowboys. They're kind of the teams left running the system. Take a chance on him. Absolutely. He's going to be higher on those teams' board. But you can't put him in a man-oriented system. You can't put him in a cover 4 system. Very scheme-specific dude. So that's the beginning of this thing. But really tough watch, man. This guy cannot move. He's slow. He's stiff. Slow is he can move. Like, he's faster than he should be at 6'4", 212 pounds. But they try to they started playing him at safety, which was a train wreck. But I had to go back to 2019 to see some of his corner tape. Like, yes, he can press you, 6'4". But the second you get off that press, he offers you nothing. Like, every NFL receiver is just going to run straight away from this guy. And if they're not running straight away from him, all it's going to take is stopping on a dime, and you'll be wide open. There's just so much work to do there. So I'm not an Israel Mukuamu guy. I can't imagine drafting this guy before the 5th round. Even the 5th is pretty rich for me. There's a lot of guys on this list that I think are much better corners. And then Elijah Griffin, who I think is just overrated. Like, from day one, he was the number 1 corner in his high school class, goes to USC. And he was fine. He was fine. Kind of reminds me of St. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, yeah, he's good. He's fine. St. Brown's a much better player, but like, where was the growth? Where's the upside? Where's the excitement? And Elijah Griffin does not have the strengths as St. Brown, so it's not a great comparison, but similar idea of like the high recruit that seemed to just kind of coast. Never really developed physically or mentally, was sure good enough of a floor to step in and be a college corner. But he's 5'11", 176, so there right off the bat, like, the dude never beefed up. He's skinny as hell. And like I said, like, his tape's not bad. He's a smart player, keeps everything in front of him, but his workout was miserable, man. 4.58 40. 7.04 3-cone, 4.38 shuttle, 34-inch vertical jump. So, like, yeah, he was the number 1 corner in his class, but he's undersized at 5'11", and he's not a great athlete. Coming out as a junior, like, his game's not all that good. I'm not drafting you just because you were the golden boy in high school, like, or because you declared early out of USC. You should have gone back and shown more. I need to see elite zone IQ or some sort of redeemable trait there for me to really like him. Elijah Griffin is consistently in like the top 20s. He's my 42nd corner in this class with a 6th round of priority free agent grade. So I'm probably not drafting him. I got 41 corners on my draft board. Now he's got a little bit higher upside than some of those dudes, but just because he is younger. But man, I couldn't get there with him. I'm like, I get it. He's a 5-star recruit, USC, 21 years old. That's exciting. It sounds great, but when I turn on the film, it doesn't look great. So, lastly is just Brian Mills. Pretty straightforward. He's my 55th corner. He's a 170-pound, 6'2" corner who ran a 4.6 40. Some people think he's a draftable prospect, and I do not. So, Brian Mills out of NC Central to me, a not my guy. Okay, the safety group. We've got Tyree Gillespie, did make my list as a my guy, which surprised me, but there's kind of a split in the draft community. Some people think he could be like a first-round pick. That's not me, but I do have him as safe, without spoiling too much for the top 10 safeties video. I do right now have him fourth. Just really good kind of hybrid do-it-all safety. Can go free, strong, great tackler, sideline to sideline speed, range, really good man coverage ability. So I do feel very good about Tyree Gillespie. Now, I did see a rumor that the Packers like him, might take him in the first round. That's too rich. I got a second to a third round grade on him. But yeah, Tyree Gillespie is pretty awesome. Then I got Darrick Forrest. Was pleasantly surprised watching him. And I'm going to get into some of these guys a little more when I do get to my top 10 safety video. But just really nice range and upside as a free safety. I actually think he's a better overall safety than the other Cincinnati guy that people really like, James Wiggins. But I like his ability to come downhill. He's a good tackler. He fills gaps really well. He's very willing to come in and meet a big back, whether it's at the goal line or using that speed to come up and make stops early. So a guy that needs to grow as far as his like zone IQ and stuff, but he's a good risk taker. He's just a high upside free safety where there's not a lot of true center fielding type of free safeties around, and he's one of them. So if you run either cover 3 or cover 1, and you need that center fielding free safety, Darrick Forrest should be very much on your radar. And then complete opposite here, Divine Diablo. Not a ton of people talking about him. Some people are. But a 6'3", 225-pound safety bandit linebacker. Now, some people think he's just a straight-up linebacker. I don't. I think he's 23 years old, going to be 24. He's not a thumper. He doesn't diagnose runs very well. You can certainly play him as a dime linebacker or a weak side linebacker in base defense. That's fine. But he's not like a Isaiah Simmons type where, like, yeah, he's going to be a middle linebacker now. That's not it for me. I think the intriguing thing to me basically is look at what Jeremy Chin did last year. 6'2", 220 pounds. Divine Diablo, very similar as far as skill set, size, and athleticism. And frankly, his tape is good. He's a good cover player. He can man guys up. He's a little stiff. He's a little tight. So, like, he might struggle on in-breaking, out-breaking routes. But for the most part, he can run, especially with tight ends who don't have that super shiftiness. He might struggle with the most shifty, like, slot receivers, but he can run with them in a straight line. So he can cover in man. He's got good zone instincts, not great. But long arms, he blitzes really well. He's an excellent tackler. It just came down to, like, I don't get why there isn't more buzz about him. I think he's a better player than Hamza Nasir-Eldin, who a lot of people like as that third-round kind of hybrid safety. I think Divine Diablo is a better player in that role. He's huge. He's 225 pounds, but I do think he's a safety. And, Cam Chancellor comes to mind. He absolutely blasts guys. And did Cam Chancellor go to Virginia Tech? I think he did. Wow, that just kind of hit me, but Cam Chancellor is a legend in my heart and one of my favorite players ever. So I don't know if I'll ever compare a guy to Cam Chancellor, but there's flashes in there. He lights guys up. So he's definitely a my guy. I got a 3rd to a 4th round grade on him, which is higher than I'm seeing. But I almost feel like that's not high enough, and he might end up higher come draft day. So he's a really fun player. I did his eval yesterday. And then my last my guy at safety is Brady Breeze. What a name. 2 of the best quarterbacks of all time have now combined to be a safety out of Oregon who opted out of the 2020 season. But just a good all-around skill set for a free safety. Actually, watching him play reminded me quite a bit of the Cal safety last year, who I also really liked, whose name's escaping me, who plays for the Jets. What's his name? Looking it up on the fly. Ashton Davis. This game reminds me a lot of him, where he's a guy that tackles well. You can go man coverage with him. He's got decent hips. Like, he can run man coverage. He's not an elite athlete, but he can do it. He's got range at free safety. Really smart guy. Just kind of do it all, balanced safety. And he's intriguing because he had just started to take that starting job by the horns at the end of his junior year and looked really good, and probably would have been drafted if he declared later round pick, 5th, 6th round, but he opted out of 2020 because the Pac-12, like a lot of these guys did, and he kind of was robbed his full senior year as a full-time starter, where there's a lot of fog of war there, and it's kind of good fog of war. Like, I don't think he would have come out and played bad because he was super stable and consistent. But the question is, how good could he have played? Could he have emerged as a top 5 safety in this class if he had that 2020 season? So, to me, 4th, 5th round for Brady Breeze, you might not be getting a high upside starter, but I think if he played, we'd probably be comparing him to Ashton Davis, who was a fan favorite last year. So, Brady Breeze is definitely one of my guys. And then my not my guys, James Wiggins out of Cincinnati. I just didn't fall in love with his game. He's a 23-year-old. He's very aggressive. He's a good tackler, but he takes bad angles sometimes. Really fast dude. He's kind of that box safety type, but he does have the athletic traits. But I don't know. I saw him kind of a lot of coverage gaffes. I just didn't really like his ability in coverage. I didn't think he played a lot of range or just great. Like, I don't think he stuck to guys in man coverage. Highlight plays, he'll come up and hit you. Like, he's going to be a special team demon. But as a full-time starter, I compared him to Brandon Jones a little bit until the pro day came out, and it's like, okay, he's a freak athlete. He's got higher upside than Brandon Jones, but I don't know. I had a 4th to a 5th round grade on him. He's my safety 14. I'd draft him for sure, but I think other people are just a lot higher on James Wiggins, whereas I like other safeties a lot better, including his teammate, Darek Forrest. Very different roles, though. And then Talanoa Hufanga out of USC. Fun player to watch. Fun player to watch. And it's hard not to think about Troy Polamalu as a guy that, again, I'm assuming has that Samoan descent, USC, kind of that bandit linebacker, does some blitzing, QB spies, covering tight ends. Like, it's hard not to think about Troy Polamalu in that role. And he makes plays like that. He is a playmaker. I understand the excitement for him because if you just turn on his highlight reel, it's like, wow, this guy's always around the football. And he's just this kind of terror in the middle of the field. But, like, translating that to the NFL, where he just doesn't have, he's not as big as Troy Polamalu. And Troy Polamalu was, like, physically intimidating. Hufanga, like, he's strong, but he's only 200 pounds at 6'1". Like, he's kind of on the lengthier side. He's got strong, long arms that he uses well for run defense and pass rushing. And I think he could be a really good third safety that does what he did at USC, where he comes in on dime packages. You're not asking him to be super rangy. You're not asking him to cover the best player in the slot. You're just saying, kind of cover the middle of the field, spy the running back. We might blitz you, defend the run, like, be careful for the halfback draw, like, watch the screen, like, all that kind of stuff. Good role player for sure, and he's going to be an awesome special teams player. He just kind of plays with that mindset where as long as he's on a football field, he's going to be happy. But as far as upside goes, I've seen him as a top 10, even top 8 safety. He does not have the athletic upside. I think he ran 4.6, 5.40, and the coverage ability on tape, it just wasn't. There wasn't a lot of coverage. There really wasn't. Whether he was showing zone IQ or like the quickness and speed to run man coverage. And then we got Josh Bledsoe. Was really surprised to see how high he was for some people. Good safety, aggressive safety, a playmaking guy. Kind of similar to Hufanga, but a better athlete and a lot more aggressive. A lot of missed tackles, a lot of blown coverages. Just a kind of a unique player where I think he can have a role as a player in this sort of 6th DB role where he comes in on dime looks. and they just kind of play him in the middle of the field. He played a lot of strong safety, slot corner, and put him in a spot where like he can gamble and go for big hits, try to jump routes, use your ball skills. That's kind of Josh Bledsoe. So like I get the excitement. He's got excellent ball skills and he's a playmaker for sure. But it comes at the cost of a lot of missed tackles and a lot of blown coverages. So if he's a full-time starter, I don't trust him to be really the definition of what a safety is. You were supposed to be the last line of defense. He's not a safety in that sense of the word. He's more of a, dime playmaker, which is fine. And maybe he really establishes the right balance of risk and reward and safety. But right now he does not have it. So to me, Josh Bledsoe is my 20th safety. And some people have him in the top 10. I disagree. I don't think he's a high upside player to do that. And he's got a lot of risk to his game too. And then Paris Ford. I think Paris Ford is everybody's not my guy. I mean, a 4.85 40 time, bro. You declare early out of Pittsburgh so that you can run a freaking 4.85 40 time. Facepalm. And it's not like we've seen videos come out of Paris Ford like, look, I improved my 40 time. Now I'm running a 4.4. I haven't seen anything like that. Yeah, like he's like, I can't run a fast 40. And it's way before that. I don't want you guys to think that I'm overreacting to a bad workout, because let me read my blurb on Paris Ford. And I only added one line to this after his 40 time came out. And I'll let you know where in here that was. So, Ford is a lengthy and quick free safety who lacks game feel and is often too late to the party when he makes a decision as a high safety. I said he has nice speed in a straight line that in theory could give him nice range if he can speed up his ability to process route combinations. So I saw some game speed. I thought he'd run in the 4.5s. And then I added this line. Though his 40 time was atrocious, which forces pause on that thought. So the question is like, was he getting there late because he was breaking things down quickly? Which I thought when I watched him on tape, he was like he started a little bit too slow, but maybe he just is that slow. But then I say his length and technique make him a nice tackler in the open field, though he is not a physical safety who should spend a lot of time in the box. He's a bit stiff and lacks the short area juice to thrive in man coverage. It looks like I did add one more line. His 4.85 40 time is a complete eyesore, though it does not match some of the top speed he showed on tape. It becomes difficult to buy Ford over similarly raw prospects with more size and speed. So to begin with, I didn't love him. I thought he didn't show the true range as a free safety that people kept talking about. I was like, yeah, he's got some speed, but it's not like what I saw, for example, with Darrick Forrest, where like he can flip his hips and get to the sideline like that. It's not Paris Ford. Certainly is not. And then beyond that, I was like, well, he's not a great run defender. He's not great in man coverage. What's he really do here? That's kind of what I thought about Ford. And then he comes out around 4.85. Like I don't even know if you can draft the guy. So what a buzzkill for him. That kind of sucks. Like he declares early. Now he is a redshirt junior, so it sounds like he at least got his degree. Because if he has 4.85 speed, he's not gonna stick in the NFL for more than a year and a half. So it is what it is. I don't like Paris Ford, and I'm not happy to admit it sucks for him, but like I'm not afraid to admit that a 4.85 40 time for a safety. I mean, I think like Eric Weddle's like the only guy like sub 4.7 that's been like a really good player with that, and he played a lot faster than that, just like I think Paris Ford does. But there you go. There's my guys, my not my guys. We are going to get into the mailbag now. The Patreon mailbag. So again, guys, the show is brought to you by my Patreon. Patreon.com/ThatFranchiseGuy. You can support the show and get access to this mailbag right here. Okay, for Mr. Irrelevant. What is the best case scenario for Gardner Minshew's career? I think he can be a quality starter. He just needs an opportunity. Like Alex Smith, Eli Manning, as you mentioned in the question, like as a player, those guys are comparable. Alex Smith, a much better runner, but Eli Manning, a stronger arm. So not a perfect comp there, but I think he can be a consistently starting caliber player. Let's say Andy Dalton. From Roy Curran, what do I think a Lions offense with Hawkinson and Pitts would look like? A lot of 12 personnel. Pitts running a lot of slot receiver. When they go 12 personnel, Hawkinson would be your true tight end. Pitts would be kind of off the line in a 2-point stance. It could work. It could work. Hawkinson's a legitimate number 1 tight end, so there's room for them both to be full-time starters for sure. From Ethan, how can you tell when a receiver should play slot or outside without using height and weight? Well, height and weight matter a lot because height is a good indicator for beating press, which you tend to see significantly more of on the outside, obviously. But to me, it's more about what kind of route trees are you best at. So, let's take, Tylan Wallace, for example. His, athletic testing might tell you, okay, he's not a speedster, he's not an outside guy, but he's good at go balls, he's good at comebacks, he's good at slants from the outside, he's good at beating press. It is a lot more about the skill set that you want to see, whereas slot receiver, it's can you run a whip route? Can you catch a bubble screen and have good run after catch ability? It's much more about the routes that you run, but system comes into play too. Different systems have different types of slot receivers too. Do I see any sort of resemblance of Big Ben and Felipe Franks? I could see it. I could see some loose comparisons there. Am I saying he's going to be Big Ben? No, but I'm kind of a Felipe Franks guy. I liked him more than I thought I would. What do I think Alden Smith's floor and ceiling are with the Seahawks? Yikes, Luke Dale. I'm surprised I didn't get another message from Luke saying, welp. I think we just saw Alden Smith's floor, and that is he's a criminal and doesn't play for them. See ya. He should not get another chance. From Goose, if you had to bet on something in the NFL draft, I was going to tweet about this before I recorded this. So I actually have some bets. Let me read them off. Just give me a second to pull them up. I actually just made some prop bets, and I was really surprised that I was able to get some of these. Oh, I got to sign in by picking all of the parking meters. Great question. I love it. Here we go. So, I know as this loads, one of them was that Justin Fields is the 3rd overall pick, and that paid even at plus 100. I took Najee Harris to be selected over 32.5. So basically that Najee Harris would be a first-round pick because I think Miami and the Steelers are very high likelihood to take a Najee Harris. I bet on Patrick Surtain to be the first defensive player taken, but I also like Micah Parsons at plus 165 for that. And then, I took Justin Fields. The reason I made this bet was I was actually looking for Justin Fields MVP bets. Because if he starts all year, I think he could be an MVP as a rookie for the Niners. But I ended up betting on him to go 3rd overall. So those are some good draft props. From Hunt, thank you for all of the effort you put into your evaluations and the draft board, but take a break from what you are doing. I don't know if you're telling me to breathe and take a break or to take a break and answer your question. Either way, thoughts on the new Bengals uniforms? I like them. I like smooth, clean jerseys that aren't too over the top. I think I'm going to get a Joe Burrow white jersey. I like the new Bengals jerseys. I have been waiting for them to make some new ones, and I'm with them. I can get behind them. From HJ, Do you think Kendrick Green would be a better left guard or center for the Packers? Probably center. He's a little smaller, 6'3". Teams tend to try to, get bigger as you work outwards. And just the center tends to be in on the most double teams, so it makes sense to have him be the smallest player. So I think you keep Jenkins at guard, or maybe even you move Jenkins to right tackle, which has been rumored. But I would like that a lot, would be to add Kendrick Green to the mix there for the Packers in like the third round. If they were lucky enough to get him in the third, I think you pull the trigger for sure. From Joe Kinahan. Just notice, it's a draft board question. Yeah, I had a typo on my draft board. I accidentally had Jaquan Bailey as my number 2 edge guy, but it was a typo. Also, thanks for the compliment on the Terps series. Shout out to TFG Plays, my secondary channel. If you're not following that, check it out in the description below. Doing a lot of just football gaming content, NCAA Madden from my Twitch streams. But thoughts on Jackson Carman? Just a reminder, guys, if you're sending in your mailbag questions, please do lead the message with mailbag question so that when I go through these, I see mailbag question and open your question, because otherwise I'm going to assume you're trying to ask me something else. But Jackson Carman, he's fine. I think he's a guard, which actually increases his upside. He got beat a ton by quickness at left tackle's footwork, and it's just arm length wasn't very good. So he had a hard time just kind of getting his hands on people. But at guard, really powerful dude, good get off. If you're drafting him at guard, I'd take him in the second round. If you want to try him at tackle, I think he's a third round prospect. But he's fine. From Loomer Cooper. How do I think the Bengals will do next year with Joe Burrow out for the first half of the season? Well, we don't know for sure that he will be. ACL recoveries can go very quickly. And it sounds like he's doing pretty well. I don't think he'll miss the first half of the year. He might miss the first few weeks, but if I had to bet, I would say Joe Burrow will get out there. Because he got hurt in, I think it was November. It was like week 13 or 12, maybe even sooner, like week 10. And it takes, I feel like ACL recovery is down to like 8 to 9 months. Because remember Hunter Henry tore his ACL in the offseason and he ended up playing like at the end of the year. So I think Joe Burrow plays. And as far as how I think they do, I'm just going to tease that off to deep dive season, because that is right around the corner, man. Deep dive, my deep dive series is, I love my draft content, but my deep dive series is probably what I'm most proud of. And I'm going to do some really nice stuff with that series this year. So I'm going to defer how the Bengals will do and any questions like that to my deep dive series over the summer, where I reveal each team in order of power rankings throughout the summer. From Nick Craig, who is the greatest journeyman quarterback of all time? So I can't speak basically any time before 2000, but in my lifetime, greatest journeyman quarterback, it's got to be, I mean, unless you count Brett Favre at the end of his career, but it's got to be Ryan Fitzpatrick. I don't think that's recency bias. The dude's played for like 10 teams. He's had a kid in like 9 different states. He's on another one. Is he gonna have another kid? I don't know. But I gotta go. I gotta go with Fitzpatrick. From JOR, longer question here. I'd like to discuss more of a theory that front offices will eventually begin to lessen the value of QBs. So this is kind of a follow-up from your question last week. First, I want to say I really think you're onto something with the theory. As you said, as offenses become more and more focused on the offensive coordinator and other factors on offense, it is possible that for most teams, especially Shanahan offenses, QBs can be replaced in the draft every 4 to 5 years. Interestingly enough, it was 2 of the most forward-thinking organizations, San Fran and the Rams, that traded an immense amount of capital to go get their QB in their systems. You would think that they would be able to get their guy much easier. So if you were to guess, what team would be a trendsetter to let their guy go to cheaply replace him? Yeah, this is definitely like deep football theory, but it's a combination of offenses getting super smart, the receivers entering the league getting deeper, offensive lines getting deeper, but just passing game in general, it's at an all-time high right now, which means the quarterbacks coming out of the league, like we got 5 deep at quarterback this year. Last year there was 5, right? 4 or 5? It was Herbs, Burrow, Tua, Love. Four first-round quarterbacks. So that's 9 first-round, like legitimate first-round quarterbacks. And I was lower on Herbert, but entering the league. You can't have 9 quarterbacks enter the. You can't have 5 quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks enter the league every year. Eventually, that talent pool is just going to run too wide. So as we sit here right now, maybe it's still catching up to it. That can explain why the Rams and the Niners moved up for those guys. But I would say, like, I agree with you. The Shanahan offense is really well set up for quarterbacks to succeed. And I think we're going to see, like, the Titans get a little experimental potentially with Ryan Tannehill. The Packers, if Jordan Love steps in for Aaron Rodgers and plays at a high level, if Justin Fields crushes it for the Niners, if Stafford steps in, that could open people's eyes and be like, these guys they're interchangeable to an extent. Now, those are all really talented football players, but I do think we'll reach a point. Like, I think last year that was a slight beginning of it, because Jordan Love, I've said this, to me, he would be, at least in my eyes, I've talked to other people that agree with me, he would be a better prospect than Trey Lance. Now, all of a sudden, people got QB needy, but I think last year we started to see it. Like, Jameis Winston was a free agent, Cam Newton was a free agent, and that allowed Jordan Love to fall. And I think eventually that's going to keep up, and you'll start to see the Trey Lances of the world, the Jordan Loves of the world, start to drop a little bit. But that is very much time will tell on that one. So it's definitely an interesting theory. It's hard to kind of wrap your mind around it. But I do still believe over time the quarterback position will begin to get slightly more devalued, because I think it's easier to play now than it ever has been. From Spencer, do I think Jerry Jones would trade up for Kyle Pitts? I do think he would, yeah. I don't think he will, but if he gets an opportunity, if he sees a window, I think he would do it. But I still believe Pitts is going to go 4th, and that Atlanta's not going to let him go anywhere else. From Robert, longtime sub and loyal subscriber. Thank you, Robert. My question is, being a huge Raiders fan, do you think we're playoff bound? Love our free agency and feel like if we have a solid draft, we could be a playoff bound. I don't want to break your heart, but I can't imagine I'm going to be too high in the Raiders' outlook for next year. We'll see how the draft goes. The offensive line is going to be worse. And with Derek Carr, you got to give him an offensive line. You're losing Aguilar, who was like their best receiver last year. And the defense is a complete train wreck. I don't think adding Yannick Ngakoue all of a sudden fixes your pass rush. If anything, it's worse because you let Maurice Hurst go. So I don't want to break your heart, but I do not have playoff expectations for the Raiders at this point in time. From Carter, have you looked at the top quarterbacks for next year's class? No, I have not. I am fully scheduled for the 2021 class. Any 2022 draft class questions, I'm going to kick your question into next January. Sorry. What are your thoughts on the rumors that the Packers trade up with the Patriots in exchange for Jordan Love? I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. Unless you're getting a Jalen Waddle, a Devontae Smith, a Jamar Chase, a Kyle Pitts, a Penei Sewell, like something like that for Jordan Love, what was the point of this whole thing? Now, if they do it, will it surprise me? No. They drafted a running back in the second round last year and then still paid Aaron Jones. So I don't think they know what the hell they're doing in Green Bay. But I think that's underselling Jordan Love. Especially because the rumors are they would give up their first-round pick, too. So it's like you give up 29 and Jordan Love to go up to 15. When you just spent the 24th pick and you traded up for him last year, terrible process. Unless you are so disgusted by what you saw, which I can't imagine that's the case. So disgusted where you're like, we got to get anything we can for this guy. But I don't buy the rumors either. I don't think they're really shopping Jordan Love. I opened up a non-mailbag here, but I'm just going to read it. From Germany here, from James. Just wanted to thank you so much for letting us get all this crazy good content for almost free. It is the only opportunity to get somehow involved and inform about the draft and the players. Appreciate that. By the way, I'm from Germany. We're also super interested in the draft and the upcoming players. Me and my friends try to watch a lot of tape, but with your evaluations in your film room, I can really show off in front of my friends. Draft time is the best of the year. Thank you. Oh, that melted my heart, James. Thank you for the kind note. I truly appreciate it, and that just blows my mind that you guys are out there in Germany consuming my content. Yeah, that's cool. From Patrick Hill, with Rodgers having just won MVP and 3 years left of his contract, how do you hope the Jordan Love situation plays out? A lot of Jordan Love questions. I hope that Rodgers plays great, that the Packers move on, he can go to an organization that knows what the hell they're doing, and then Jordan Love comes in and hopefully Packers figured it out. And Jordan Love can play well in that system and look good. The expectations that Rodgers can just carry this team to a Super Bowl somehow go away. And they say, we got a rookie quarterback. We got to give him receivers. We got to, draft well on defense. Hopefully that switches for Jordan Love's sake. But for Aaron Rodgers' sake, I want him to finish with a great year in Green Bay, for them to say thank you for everything, but it's time we go to the kid. And maybe Denver flames out with Drew Lock and they say, yes, we want Aaron Rodgers, and we are going to give him the late career Peyton Manning experience, and Rodgers can go and win a couple Super Bowls for a team that knows what the fuck they're doing. On to REA Beats question. If you were a Falcons GM, what would you be looking to do? They're one of the most perplexing teams at the moment, and they don't have a clear path to the Super Bowl in place. The Falcons. They're in the definition of purgatory. So I didn't hate my most recent mock draft where we ended up with Pitts, Travis Etienne, and Wyatt Davis, because that offense would be elite. And if you have an elite top 3 offense with a good coordinator now in Arthur Smith, you're going to have a chance. Defense is a mess, though. But honestly, I don't know if... I do like Trey Lance, but we just talked about kind of the influx of talent at quarterback, and I think there's a chance that they're in position again next year to get another Trey Lance, if you will. Whoever it is, I don't know. But if this thing goes really sour, you can get out of the Matt Ryan thing next year. I do think it makes a little bit more sense to go with the milk everything out of the Matt Ryan, Julio Jones window as you can. Those are excellent players. But it's tough. I understand. Like, you're sitting there with the 4th pick. It is a deep quarterback class. The future is never guaranteed with that position in the draft, whether the class is as good or whether you get the high pick to draft the guy. But it's tough. I could see both arguments, but I am slightly, especially after they kicked Matt Ryan's contract into the future and made it even harder to get out of, I'm definitely on the side of milk out the Matt Ryan window and just maybe you hit some sleepers, defensively speaking, can get a quality defense. I mean, they have some players, right? They got Grady Jarrett, Deion Jones. You've got A.J. Terrell looks pretty good at corner. So you've got some pieces there. You just got to hit on a few other spots. But Yeah, they're in a really hard place. Okay, from Brandon. How often, if at all, do you look at analytics when doing player evals? Well, I look at analytics a lot. It just kind of depends on what kind of analytics you're talking about. But analytics is a broad, encompassing term. Like, do you count a PFF grade as an analytic? PFF has a lot of different little stuff you can break down. Like, I don't use a lot of the heavy analytics. I'll be honest. I like to use any sort of stats or analytics that I can to get a picture of consistency and production. Because obviously I don't have time to watch a fifth round prospect 5 games of a fifth round prospect. That just would be impossible for myself, who's setting out to get grades on 500 players. And frankly, the NFL probably doesn't even watch that many games on those low round guys. I think a PFF profile, which includes a combination of grades and stats and analytics, depending on your definition, paints a really good picture of consistency and production. And then you go to the tape to understand scheme fit and physical ability on the field, how they move, how they look. That's where I kind of get a better picture of upside and scheme fit, strength, like minute strengths and weaknesses, as opposed to more broad, like, oh, he's slow or he missed a bunch of tackles. More like, the Ifeatu Melifonwu tick that I talked about earlier, where he opens up too early. That's the kind of stuff you get from watching tape. And then the testing is the last kind of leg there, that you're just hoping that the testing kind of reinforces good speed that you see it on tape. So I hope that answers your question. From Orange Potato, do I think that the Lions could pick Barmore at 7? Ooh, I think they could. I think that'd be consistent with their messaging as far as getting more nasty and biting kneecaps. It would throw a wrinkle. It'd throw a wrinkle in the draft. I think it's possible. I do think it's possible. It'd be a surprise, but I don't think it'd be the worst thing ever either. From Jack Brown, as we've seen a rise in the McVay-Shanahan offense. I don't like that you listed McVay first, because McVay, people forget this. McVay is a Shanahan copycat, although he's very innovative himself. Over the last 5 years or so, what newer schemes will we see over the next 5 years? And do I see the Shanny offense continuing to spread throughout the league? What newer schemes? That is a question for a coach with maybe Kyle Shanahan himself can answer that question. But I could not tell you what, genius scheme is on the way up. That's above my pay grade. There's only a select few amount of humans on this planet that innovate offensive schemes that turn into consistently widespread NFL looks. So that's above my pay grade. That's for someone with a coaching background that is drawing up plays at a very high level. So I don't know, but the Shanahan offense has been around, the sort of wide zone, play action oriented, make your short passing game in a lot of ways is your run game, set up third and manageable, and hit big play shots in play action on early downs. The overall philosophy and the core principles go back a long time, but we are definitely seeing a renaissance of it right now. And I think eventually defenses will get better at defending it. I think the cover 4 system that I was talking about when we did my Guys segment, that very much is designed to limit some of that stuff. I don't think it's a coincidence that Brandon Staley kind of worked with McVay to kind of almost perfect that defense. Now, it didn't work all that good against the Packers in the NFC divisional round, but that also was Aaron Rodgers and the run game for the Packers just kind of beating up the Rams defense. But schematically, it's a good system to run because the Shanahan offense is actually designed to beat cover 3 with the way that they attack the sidelines, like the deep sidelines with the crossing routes and stuff. That's really tough on a Seattle 3 defense. So the league just kind of ebbs and flows like that. The Seattle 3 defense was in. Everyone was running Seattle 3, and all of a sudden those Shanahan offenses are like, we know how to beat that. There will be new trends. I couldn't tell you what they are, though. I could not predict what the next big thing is. You know, the read option, the RPO, the Wildcat. Like, I couldn't tell you what it's going to be. That's above my pay grade, but there will be something. It's not like we're going to reach a point where all 32 teams are running, the wide zone Shanahan offense. So that is all of our mailbag questions. What a show. That was a really fun one to record. We actually just got one come in from Scott Nance, so let's not wrap up quite yet. How serious are Caleb Farley's injury concerns? So I've done some good research on this. It's a microdiscectomy. And basically what that is, and someone else could explain this much better, but you have your, I'm already struggling, but there's a part of the vertebrae or the bone that is between the vertebrae. Anyway, there's a part in the back that can flare up and kind of get pushed out further than it's supposed to be so that when contact hits it, when you walk, when you run, when things bump up against it, it gives you a sensation of pain. And it's in his lower back. The discs. It's the discs. So you have your discs, and then you have you have the bones, which I think they call the vertebrae. Again, not a doctor. And then you have the discs that are in between each vertebrae or the bone. And those discs can slide out or become flared and inflated. And right now, Caleb Farley's were fully inflated. So as he walked, as he moved, as he got hit, as he worked out, it was like, don't like that. So what they did was kind of go in there and they cleaned it up. They cleaned up the discs, which is like this kind of like, the way I understand it, and some doctor would watch this and be like, this fucking idiot has no idea what he's talking about. But my understanding is those discs are kind of this organic hybrid cartilage material. It'd be hilarious to clip this up and be like, 2 minutes of TFG, I have no idea what he's talking about. But I'm kind of on the right path here. That it's not like a bone that doesn't really change in shape. Like this kind of flares up and it grows and it pushes back and forward. So they kind of went in and just tried to kind of, I think they take some of it out, these discs, and patch them back up and give them, I think it's like a 9-week recovery. And he's good to go after the operation. But the problem is there's like a 20% chance that whatever caused those discs to become flared up, to push out, whatever it was, what I've understood is there's like a 20% chance that that's going to become a recurring thing. And that as he works out, as he lifts, as he gets hit, it's just going to happen again and again and again. And that's what happened to Tony Romo with this same thing. Sometimes, 80% of the time is what I hear, you do the operation and it doesn't come back. And this is a terrible analogy, but it sounds like it's kind of like a cancer. Sometimes you take it out and it doesn't come back. Sometimes you take it out and whatever caused it to be there in the first place, it's going to keep coming back. Not life-threatening like that, but I think it's a decent analogy. So there's your medical report from TFG. But yeah, there's a chance it comes back and it just keeps bothering him. And he can't play with it. That's an immense amount of pain. It's probably dangerous. So he can't play as long as those discs are bothering him. So if it keeps coming back, and it's a terrible time, I think it is actually the second time he's had this operation, believe it or not, which leans towards him maybe being in the 20% of this is going to be a recurring thing. So it's major. It's not something to dismiss, that's for sure. He's an exciting player. But if he slips out of the first round, I wouldn't be surprised. I really wouldn't. It's a risk. It is an absolute risk. So great. I'm glad we were able to talk about that question right there. with awesome medical advice from TFG. So that is the end of the show. Really fun podcast. That's all I got. I'm going to try to get top 10 corners, top 10 safeties up over the next few days. Reminder, guys, if you enjoyed this podcast, if you enjoy my draft content, take out your phones and set a reminder. Come back on draft night so we can talk about all this stuff. You can drop in your questions in the chat. I'm going to be having a lot of time to get to your questions, react to all these players, break down everything. Oh, I'm so excited. Let's go, baby. Draft season is the best. Peace out, and we'll see you very soon. Cheers.